y'all, how's it going? My name is Tara and I'm a super grateful recovering alcoholic. I got sober on September 15th of 2013, so it was just about 5 years ago to the day. This is my very first video on this YouTube channel, and I've honestly wanted to post for a long time, but I've really just been kind of afraid to. I mean, for one, like we all know how the internet can be, and to post something as vulnerable and intimate as sobriety can be, it's just kind of overwhelming. Not only is it kind of difficult to come out and say, like, I'm an alcoholic, this is all the crazy shit that I've done. It's really easy to look at someone who doesn't look like your typical alcoholic or addict and just think that the things they say or what they claim about themselves is just not true. Because again, a lot of people don't understand alcoholism and addiction and the whole recovery process in general. I mean, even for me, I've had friends who, even after I've been years sober now, will be like, no, like, I think it's just a phase. I think you'll be able to drink again one day. Or like, now that you haven't drank in a couple years, like, I'm sure now that you can handle it. Like, I'm sure that even after everything that you've been through with alcohol, that you'll be able to drink just because it's been a long time. Because I am not your typical alcoholic narrative. I mean, even some of the guys that I was in rehab with just thought my parents shoved me in there because I had one too many margaritas like a couple nights in a row. But I really don't know what it is, but it's almost like cringy or weird when someone who you don't think looks like your typical alcoholic or addict says that they are an alcoholic or an addict. It's like, it's almost as if people think like young people aren't capable of destroying themselves mentally and physically. Age does not protect you against alcoholism or addiction. Neither does your skin color or your gender or your sexual orientation or your religion. There is absolutely nothing to protect you from alcoholism and addiction. Any young person can do just as much, if not more, damage than any 50-year-old man or woman. This stigma, along with others, is really what I've been wanting to fight against for years now. There are so many, more than ever before. There are more young people in trouble than ever before when it comes to addiction and alcoholism. I don't personally speak for the entire sober or young sober community in general. All thoughts and opinions I have on this channel are completely mine, and just because I think them and I say them doesn't mean another sober person would share them, or it doesn't mean another person who is struggling with their addiction would share them. This channel I really just want to use as kind of a collective information base for people who are sober, young and sober, old and sober, like currently in their addiction. Anyone who's struggling with anything in this realm, I kind of just want to be able to start seeing more people put the word out there that, hey, this is a real thing, this is an epidemic, and here's information if you need it, or here's help to how to get sober if you want it. So with all of that being said, this isn't really going to be a typical, like, I'm gonna tell you every single detail of my life kind of sobriety video. I've actually recorded 4 different versions of this already. Each version I recorded was more detailed than the last. And the more that I recorded and the more detailed I got, the more I realized that all the details just weren't important. The people and the places and the things in my story, maybe people can relate to them, but I feel like people in general who are struggling don't really relate to the specifics. They relate to the general premise, the general idea of anyone's recovery story. So today I'd like to sit down and share a little bit of where I've come from. I personally dealt with eating disorders and depression from my very early teens, and when I was in school I had absolutely no interest in making friends or having friends or really having a life kind of whatsoever. I hid myself in different relationships with guys, some abusive, but every single one of them was like severely codependent. When I found out that my dad was going to prison when I was 17 years old, I basically ran away from home and drank and smoked and snorted anything around me for 2 years straight. I was with a guy that entire time, and our entire relationship was just fueled by the need to be as unconscious as possible. During that time of binging for 2 years, there wasn't such thing as a night for me anymore without blacking out. And every single night it got worse and worse and worse. A lot of my nights with him were really violent, but on the last night that we were together, I ended up back at my parents' house covered in bruises and blood. I had a busted lip, I was 20 pounds overweight, and I was just incoherently drunk, and I was a complete shadow of the person that I had been just 2 years prior. At this point, I was just completely immersed in alcoholism. I found a few months of sobriety after I went to rehab for the first time at the age of 19, but after that, I basically drank all the way through up until my 21st birthday, and then a couple months after that. In that time span from 19 to 21, I stole things from my family and friends. I was sexually assaulted. I used my body and my sexuality to stay intoxicated. I watched my own father go to prison. I completely ruined my relationship with my family. And I watched my aunt, who was my absolute best friend, completely disappear from pancreatic cancer. I turned 21 in April of 2013, and I stopped drinking in September of 2013. And by the end, more so after I turned 21, I was blacking out every night, but more so after I turned 21, I became completely mentally unhinged. I was drinking as soon as I woke up in the mornings, and I was mutilating myself in every possible way. I was cutting myself. I was punching myself until I bled. I was slamming my head into the concrete. I was burning myself with my lighter for months and months and months. And not only when I was 21, but even before, when I was on that 2-year binge, when I was 17 to 19, I was this completely incoherent, belligerent, sobbing, depressed, screaming at everyone, being abusive towards everyone thing. I was nowhere near the person I was when I first started drinking only about 5 years ago or so. I was suicidal at the end, and I waited and I prayed. I prayed for my blacked out self to take care of it, because I wasn't ever sober because I was drinking as soon as I woke up in the morning, but I knew that the non-blacked out part of me couldn't do it. Like, I just wasn't strong enough to. But like I said, it's really not the people and places that matter in my story. I really feel like it's the bigger picture that matters. I drank and I drank and I drank and I drank, and until I knew that I should not drink anymore, until I knew that I had a problem, and until I knew that everything in my life was a complete disaster because I couldn't stop. But even then, I still physically could not stop. I stayed in this cycle because I was physically not capable of getting out of the cycle. In the mornings, I would shake without alcohol. I would feel so ill without alcohol. If I was even sober for like 3 hours, I just felt really, really ill. I knew that I was throwing away my entire life, but still, I could not physically stop drinking. I absolutely knew for a fact that my life would get better if I stopped drinking, and if I could just get my shit together, and if I could just get sober and stay sober and just completely stay away from that scene. But I knew I couldn't stop. I don't know what it was. I feel like alcoholism really is like the 8th wonder of the world. Like, I can sit here and tell you all of this stuff, and I can tell you that I ruined my life, and I can tell you all of these horrible things that I've done, and it just doesn't make any sense that I wasn't able to stop. Like, logically, you could just be able to say, I've done so many horrible things. I'm hurting myself and others around me. I should stop drinking. But then it's like 5 minutes later, it just, all of that logic just completely, poof, it's like flies out the window. It doesn't matter. When you're in that cycle, and when you are immersed in alcoholism and addiction, no logic, there's no amount of logic that can talk you out of that situation. There's no amount of logic that can bring you out of that physically. You are just completely stuck. It's never ever been an issue of self-control or IQ or mental capability. It's always been an issue of, are you an alcoholic or are you not? Or are you an addict or are you not? And I really feel like that is the biggest thing that people don't understand. I feel like people look at this situation very logically, and they say what I said. Like, you're doing all of these bad things, you're ruining your life, just stop. Just put the bottle down. That's it. That's all you gotta do. Just put the bottle down, put the pills down, it'll be fine. But I mean, there's a completely other side to that coin, and it's the side of, I mean, alcoholism and addiction, it's so much longer than to just put in a little video. Like, it's such a complex disease, and again, I feel like people have a really hard time understanding that, because logically it makes absolutely no sense. This disease just makes absolutely no sense. This alcoholism that I'm inflicted with completely changed who I was. It took absolutely everything from me. Like, at first it took away little things, like it took away my car, it took away my grades in college. Then it started taking bigger things, like my relationship with my family. Then it took my morals, and then it took all of my sanity, just like out the window. Like, any sane, logical part of me that existed before I started drinking was just nowhere to be found. Today is September 6th, and I am just a couple days away from 5 years sober. I got sober on September 15th, so I am just a couple days away, and I'm really excited. Even though, like, I'm sitting here and almost laughing at my past and everything that I've done in this disease in general. Like, I know it's absolutely no laughing matter, and I have worked my ass off to get to where I am today, and it has taken every ounce of mental strength I have to be able to come from this. When I first got sober, I couldn't talk about it. I would cry. I literally stayed in my room for like months. Like, I think I stayed in my room for 6 months. Like, I was dealing with like really horrible mental disorders. Like, I had crazy OCD. I was super agoraphobic. I was having panic attacks literally every 30 seconds. Like, my body was just on alert mode all the time, and I just couldn't stop. I was in hell. Like, not only is drinking hell, but after you stop drinking, the sobriety part of it all is even harder. It feels like to me than the drinking was. Like, as much damage and destruction I did while I was drinking, and as hard and as killer as that was internally, it was like that was a complete walk in the park when it came to sobriety. But again, I'm almost 5 years sober, and I have battled literally tooth and nail to get to where I am today. I have beat all of my mental disorders. I have overcome my depression. I was able to get over my OCD. I don't have agoraphobia anymore. I'm not anorexic anymore. And I do not have panic attacks anymore. That was the biggest one for me. I wasn't able to live my life or go outside because I was having panic attacks every 5 seconds, but I got over it. I worked really hard to get over it. But even though I've done so much for myself personally, there's always been this part of me that feels really guilty about my sobriety or what I have now after what happened with my addiction. I feel like this is partly because I know a lot of people who are still stuck in the cycle, and they aren't able to live a free, happy life like me, like I'm sitting here doing right now, because they physically can't get sober at this point in their lives. But I feel like the biggest part of me feels guilty because I'm not doing anything to help anyone else. I don't have a blueprint for sobriety. Like, I don't have a set list of like, do this, and you'll be totally sober. Like, I don't have that. But I mean, I have a story to tell, and I have something to share with other people who might be struggling, and I feel like I just haven't done enough with that. And that makes me feel really sick, kind of. But I feel like now I'm finally strong enough and confident enough in where I am and in my own sobriety, with my family, with my friends. I'm strong enough in all of these areas of my life to come out and say, hey, this is what happened to me. And if anyone is able to get any kind of help or solace from anything that I say, then my journey was completely 1000% worth it. When I first got sober, I came to YouTube to look for sober people. I feel like I really needed to see that you can, 1, get sober at a young age, and that 2, you can live a completely normal life with sobriety. I was 21 when I got sober, so all of my friends were still in their crazy like college binge party bar cocaine phase. I was absolutely terrified to engage with the outside world. I was literally not able to fathom a life without alcohol because it is so ingrained in everything we do, as I feel like as a society as a whole. Like, oh, if you're gonna go to a football game, like, here's a Bud Light. If you wanna go to a concert, oh, like, here's a Miller Lite. If you wanna go on a date, oh, have a fancy glass of wine. If you wanna go to like a nice business meeting, oh, here's a little martini for you. Like, I feel like in every stage of life, there's always some kind of alcohol to complement that. And I was just so afraid for my future because like I hadn't done so much. I was 21, I was so young. I was like how am I gonna go to Paris without having like a really nice glass of wine with all my cheeses? And like how am I gonna go to Las Vegas and go to the strip and go gambling and go to the casino and go to all these places? And how am I not gonna get trashed? Going to those places and getting trashed just sounds like so much fun. Like how am I gonna live a life without that? Like I could not fathom a life without that. And not only really was I scared for myself, I was kind of scared of everyone else around me. I was scared of what other people were gonna think of me. Like at the time when I got sober, I was so sick. I felt so sick, and I was so ashamed, and I was so embarrassed of what I had done. Like I have never felt more embarrassed of anything in my entire life than back then 5 years ago when I first got sober. My classmates, during the time it took me to go to rehab and fuck up my life multiple times, my classmates were able to get a degree and start like real adult jobs. I felt so guilty and so ashamed because like people my age were doing something completely different than I was, because I had spent all my time drinking and like doing drugs. And like, how do you tell people that? How like when someone asks you like, oh, where do you go to school, or like, what do you do for a living? Like, I'm like a 20-something-year-old, like I should be able to answer that question. But when people used to ask me that, I felt so sick. I was like and I would like pretend to drop something, or I would like pretend to get a phone call, because like I physically could not answer people with the truth, because it was just so like, how do you tell society or anyone out in the normal world that you're like, you think that you're such a fuck up? Like, how do you tell people that? Not only the first and second thing, but like on top of all of that, like, how am I supposed to deal with these people who are telling me that alcoholism isn't a real disease? Like, how am I supposed to argue with that? I've had people literally tell me that because I don't look like a toothless old man living under a bridge, that what I say is just complete bullshit. I have half the people in my life telling me that all of the mental and physical damage that I did to myself, and because I wasn't able to stop drinking, that means I'm an alcoholic. But I also have other people in my life telling me that it's just a phase, I'll be able to drink again, everyone binges, everyone acts like that at a certain point in their life. But I mean, the truth is that no, people don't act like me for a certain point in their life. Yes, people binge and they go to college and they drink, but when alcohol or drugs becomes the only thing that you think about, and it becomes the only thing that your life revolves around, and you can't have one thought outside of that, like, that's not normal. And I feel like it's a very normal perception for people to think that like your early 20s are meant for just like fucking around and getting drunk all the time and going to Vegas and blacking out and like all this stuff. And that is true to an extent. Like, people are very much entitled to experiment and do whatever the hell that they want. But on the other side of this coin, there are people in this world who cannot drink like other people, and they spiral because of it. No matter what I do in my life, even if I become the next Mother Teresa and win like 1 billion Nobel Peace Prizes, I know that getting sober will by far be my greatest accomplishment ever. Like, I know that I will never outdo myself with that. Like, every day that I am still sober is another huge accomplishment, and it just keeps adding and adding up. There is nothing in this world I can do that will ever compare to me pulling myself out of hell, because that's what it is. Alcoholism and addiction is hell on earth. But to bring this all together and to circle back, I feel like I'm getting very off topic, but 5 years ago I came to YouTube because I wanted to see that someone could live a sober life, a fun life, a interesting life, a life that isn't one where you're terrified every single day for the rest of your life. Like, I had to know that there was something else out there. Of course, I've heard of people who are way younger than me getting sober, and I even now have sober friends in my life who are like the same age, if not younger, or a little older. But I feel like these have all kind of been more recent developments, as opposed to finding this when I first got sober. For some reason, there's just not, well, I mean, like, I get it, but there's just not a lot of people out there actively talking about alcoholism and addiction. I feel like, firstly, and the most blaring, heartbreaking reason is that many young people don't make it out of this cycle alive. Secondly, I feel like a lot of the people who start drinking when they're young and doing drugs when they're young aren't able to break out of the cycle until they're much older. It just stays with you until adulthood or death. And third, I feel like the ones who make it out just aren't willing to really speak about it. And the ones who do make it out are a very small percent of the pie. It's said, and it is true, that most people who do have trouble with drugs and alcohol aren't able to ever get out. And it's horrible, but it's the truth. It's a very small percent of people who are able to get sober. And even if they do make it out, a lot of them, like I said, aren't really willing to talk about it, because it's just so traumatizing to, one, go through it, and then to sit there and rehash it for the whole world to like pick apart is just, it's a very terrible thing to go through. But like I've said, this topic, young alcoholism and young addiction, this is not by any means a new thing. I am just one of millions and millions. I am just one single person of millions and millions who have gone through this exact same thing as I have. Like, my rock bottom personally was very ugly. But the crazy thing is, to me, is that like, there are people, like, if I don't want to put it on a scale, but like, if my rock bottom is here, then like there's people whose rock bottoms are just like, I can't even see them. Like, Mine is not even by far the worst story of alcoholism or addiction. Just it's everywhere. It's absolutely no matter where you look. I mean, you see it. It's all over the place. It's running completely rampant today. And if I'm gonna be completely honest with you, I don't know why I'm sitting here or how I'm sitting here. Like, I don't know how I was able to get sober. Like, it's like I said, like, it's not just like a formula you can throw together. I have no idea how I was able to pull myself out of where I went through. Like, statistically, I should not be sitting here. So few people escape this cycle. For example, the guy that I was with when I was 17 for 2 years, the last I heard of him a couple months ago, he was a heroin addict living in his car. For so long when we were young, we smoked and snorted and drank together, and we were intoxicated. We were blacked out like every single night for 2 years. How am I able to then get sober a couple years later, and how is he still very, very, very much active in his addiction? Like, it got way worse for him. Like, how was I able to pull myself out before I got to that point? And not only that, but why have so many of my classmates and friends and friends and family members, why are so many people dying from this? But like I've said several times, sobriety isn't a formula. It's not something that you can just A, B, C, D, do this and you'll be fine. Like, it's not like that. It's different for every person. There's not a rule that you can apply to your life and just have everything magically fixed. Sobriety really fucking sucks at first. And like, I hate to say that, but it's true. Like, sobriety will be the hardest thing that you will ever do, ever. Hands down, no matter what you, like, it doesn't matter what anyone says. Doesn't matter anyone's opinion. Sobriety will be the hardest thing that you will ever do if you decide to go through with it. You know what to do, but your body and your mind and this crazy part of your subconscious is like, go back to killing yourself. Go back, go drink, go use, it's fine. Just, you feel bad today? Oh, I know what'll fix that. Go get a beer. Like, no, like, there will always, no matter how sober you are, there will always be a part of you who is trying to talk you back into that life. But I guess in conclusion, I'm basically just here to tell you that you're not alone. Even though you are one of millions and millions and millions, that isn't meant to diminish your voice or your story or your struggle in absolutely any way. What you have inside of you is very, very, very powerful. And I don't know how you get there, but you can and will overcome if you start taking the steps to a better, healthier, drug and alcohol-free life. But like I said before, even though I can't tell you how to get and stay sober, I can and will be posting on this channel explaining how I was able to get from point A to point B, which is here, 5 years sober almost, and engaged to a really wonderful man, and have not all, you never have all your shit figured out, but I have a lot more shit figured out than I did 5 years ago. Like I said, I feel guilty, not because I am where I am and I'm happy and I have all these things and so many people don't, like, yeah, that makes me feel really guilty. But on the other hand, I feel guilty because I have all of this stuff to say and to share if anyone wants to listen. And I really hope that one day someone will see this. Hi, kitty. I really hope that one day someone will see this and will be able to connect or find inspiration or find anything that is at all helpful to them in any part of their journey. I feel like really, I really don't know what put this in my heart, but I've been feeling this way for months, that it is like my mission, but not to normalize alcoholism or addiction, because like it's so complex that you can't just normalize it. It's kind of impossible. But I feel like it's really my mission now in life to have all of this wealth of knowledge, and I feel like it's really now my turn to share it with anyone who is willing to listen and learn about getting sober and staying sober if you want to be sober. Because like I said, this disease is rampant in our society. It's an epidemic. Like, it's literally an epidemic. It's killing so many people every day. There's like, I think it was in 2017, it was reported that 200 people a day were dying from overdoses, and that's just overdoses, like on heroin and like drugs. That doesn't include alcohol or suicide related incidents. That doesn't record any of that. But this is an epidemic, and if there's anything that I can do to help anyone, I'm here to do it. There is a life after alcoholism and addiction. There is. It seems really fucking impossible, and I know it hurts. It hurts more than anything in this entire world. But if you stick with it, if you do it for just like a little teeny tiny bit every day, if you just work towards it, you can have years, you can have days, you can have months, you can have weeks, you can have whatever you want. but it is possible, it is doable. I am living proof, and other sober people are living proof that it is possible. This video was way longer than I ever wanted it to be, so I'm gonna end it here. But if you have any, like I said, I'm gonna be posting pretty often. I have a couple of video ideas already, but if you are in your journey, or if you have questions because you know someone who is in their journey, and you have anything that you want answered or anything like that, please let me know. I'm gonna be posting all the time because I'm gonna be trying to get as much information out there as possible. So yeah, thanks for listening to my story, and thanks for coming to hang out in my little YouTube home, and I will see you guys hopefully next time. Okay, bye.